Hello everyone, this is Dr. Brazen, coming to you from the One Stop Shop. So, recently I downloaded the closed beta test for Phantasy Star Online 2. I thought I'd go ahead and provide my thoughts and feelings on the game, which you know what I think, as well as provide a few inner working mechanisms for the game and just give you a general overview for how the gameplay feels. So, if you like this content, then please give us a like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Comment down below. Let us know what you think as well. So with all that being said, let's get right into it. So I was first introduced to this franchise roughly about a decade ago. I started off with the classic games on the Sonic Classic Collection. I think back on the PS3. And yeah, I enjoy them quite a bit. They are a bit old-fashioned and outdated by today's standards, but back then I could definitely say that these are a bit revolutionary for their time, especially considering they're from the late 80s, early 90s. So the games comprise Phantasy Star 1 for the Sega Master System, as well as Phantasy Stars 2 through 4 on the Sega Genesis or Sega Mega Drive if you live outside North America. And they were essentially classic turn-based RPGs, but with a sci-fi element that you really didn't see in other franchises at the time, especially other JRPGs, such as Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. And they were actually quite revolutionary for the time, story-wise. And even had a few story beats that I think predated similar ones in other games, such as those in Final Fantasy. And I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I definitely would check out these games. I think they are worth your time even now. Very good, and there's only 4 games to the classic series, so yeah, I definitely give them a shot. As far as Phantasy Star Online, which they rebooted around 2000, I believe it was, that first came out on the Dreamcast. I also didn't play it until around the same time I played the classics. Of course, at that time, Sega was no longer supporting the game, and I played on a private server. And I played for a little bit. I enjoyed what I played, but I thought I'd save most of my experience for the sequel that was promising to come out soon. It came out in 2012 in Japan, but as we all know, unfortunately, it never saw a release in the West. That is until 8 years later, now, and thanks to Phil Spencer from Microsoft, we are finally seeing the game released on the Xbox One as well as PC, with promises it'll come to other consoles sometime in the future. So, I have a very limited experience with the franchise, especially the Phantasy Star Online games. I never played Phantasy Star Universe, or Zero, or Nova, or any of the others. I know there's quite a few. But I have to say, I have really enjoyed what I've played of Phantasy Star Online so far. So, with that being said, let's get right into the hub world, and my thoughts and feelings on the actual Phantasy game, right? So the hub world of the game is actually pretty, I wouldn't say complicated, but it's a good size for a hub world for something like this. It's like Super Mario 64, essentially, where the actual combat-based content of the game takes place on the worlds, and your main hub world is on a space station. You're essentially a mercenary for a group called ARCs. And within this hub world, there's quite a lot to see and do, actually. I was quite surprised, because this reminds me a lot of how Monster Hunter sets up its gameplay. Essentially with a hub world, and then with the hunting areas in Monster Hunter existing outside the hub world. But in Monster Hunter, you only get 1 or 2 areas, and that's about it. In Phantasy Star Online, you have a main communication area where your mission objectives are set. You have a whole shopping plaza, a casino area, a cafe area. There's actually quite a bit to see and do outside of just combat in the game. I actually quite enjoyed that a bit. And I can see where they can house a bit of their own events for the game. So, to describe this subworld a bit more, the shops are massive in number. There's quite a lot going on with the shopping in this game. So you have many different types of currencies, such as one called Fun, which you obtain for socializing with others. So there's a fun shop. Meseta, the main currency of the game, is used for quite a number of shops as well. For weapons, for cosmetics, etc. And there's even things you can buy for your house in the game. So you are provided with a personal house. And My experience with the house was a bit limited. I barely touched it, if I'm to be honest, and it was very small. Just a single room, and I don't know if you would expand it as the game progresses. But I really didn't get into it too much because just one day with the beta, for me at least, and I really didn't spend too much time with it. It seemed to be fairly limited. I wouldn't say gimmicky, but just a little time waster on the side. Nothing too much. But the other features, the cafe and the casinos, got a lot of content to the game. I didn't spend much time in the casino, but it looks like you can spend a lot of time in there. Kind of like in Dragon Quest, and spend a lot of money to obtain prizes and rewards, which are completely unique to the casino alone. And then the cafe, you can obtain items from the various worlds that you visit in order to make food and various things like that. Again, I didn't look too heavily into it. I was just trying to familiarize myself with many of these mechanics. But it really seems like it could be a source of fun maybe on the side sometime in the future when you get bored with just the main content of combat. So, speaking of the combat, it takes place again on these separate worlds that are separate from the hub world. And you have a number of planets that the mercenary travels to. You could travel with a party of up to, I believe, 4. And explore, and most of the combat from I've seen here, again making comparisons with Monster Hunter, it's very Arcadian feel, I would say. Monster Hunter is more of a mechanics-heavy type of video game, if you have played it. I know Monster Hunter World has sold like over 15 million now, so I know it's becoming a more popular franchise. It's why I decided to make a comparison here. And yeah, the game seems to be a lot more focused on attacking small enemies instead of larger ones, at least from what I've played. There are quite a number of bosses I fought, but most of the combat that I would enter when I went into a world was focused on taking out a ton of small enemies with a boss at the very end, once you get from point A to point B. And I enjoyed it quite a lot. The gameplay had quite a number of mechanics, but the game didn't seem to focus on them too much. For example, weapons seem to be largely RNG-based, so you would defeat a boss and you would obtain the weapons, and they would come with their own stats, etc. And the game didn't seem to place too much emphasis on maintaining these stats on your own because, well, as all your stats that were tied to your weapons, something kind of like weapon augments or upgrades, that sort of thing, were all based on RNG. You either obtained a weapon that had better augments, or you obtained a weapon that didn't. Which means that you would have to get rid of quite a lot of weapons in this game, with how often you obtain them. As far as the mission structure goes, there were quite a number of different missions. As far as mission variety, you had your standard attack all enemies, with some pretty bad English. Introducing that.
Emergency! Code! Distraction!
And you also had quite a number of other missions as well, such as, I forgot what the name of these creatures are, but little friendly creatures on the desert planet. You would have to use emotes to communicate with them, and some fun little additional things like that. There are a number of different ideas, probably many that I haven't seen yet. But it looks like there will be some mission variety to the game, besides just fighting enemies all the time. As far as fighting the enemies go, it is quite fun. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It is a little bit mindless, a lot more mindless, I'd say, than Monster Hunter from your moment-to-moment interactions. But again, it's a lot of fun, and it was neat to see other people roaming around these worlds with you, just random strangers that you can walk up to, because again, this is an MMO. And people would just randomly walk up to you and help you out. I thought that was a pretty nice feature for the game. And what you see here is the planet, I believe it's called Yopal. It's kind of a beach planet. There's also a jungle planet, a desert planet, volcano planet. I have no idea what else. But it seems to be your typical gamut of planet-based variety. The environments were interesting enough. You can tell the graphics are a bit dated. This is a game that came out 8 years ago, and even then I doubt that this was a game that was revolutionary for graphics. This does predate the PS4 and Xbox One, so it's likely they had the game originally intended to be ported even to the PS3 and 360. So don't get into this game thinking it's going to wow you with graphics or even frame rate, but it runs solid enough. I did notice some lag occasionally, especially in big areas with a lot of monsters. But I didn't have too many issues overall. The game seems to run fine, or at least it ran fine for me during the closed beta test, even with the high traffic that the beta test experienced. So I'm pretty positive going into that in future open beta tests as well as the final release. So moving on, there's also the bosses from these areas, and there was quite a bit of variety here. They were a lot of fun. For example, one was a snowy area where there were two kind of like tiger-like enemies. They reminded me a lot of, how to describe it, Xenogre, I believe, without the lighting capabilities from Monster Hunter. They were a lot of fun to fight. What you see here is the boss from the Whirlpool area that I showed earlier. This is like a big water dragon thing, of course, and as you can see there, you can actually damage parts off of these guys, just like the damaging parts in Monster Hunter and breaking them. You can break the horn off of them if you target the horn. With a move there that I believe it's called the Positron Blast. It kind of hits right through the armor of the enemies, does multiple hits, so there's definitely a lot of interesting abilities with weapons in this game. Ranger here seems to be pretty overpowered in my opinion. I don't know if all classes feel that way, but these guys seem to be very, very powerful, very well-rounded. I was able to avoid a lot of damage from enemies because I could like distance as well as dish out a lot of damage too. Especially this Positron Bolt skill that I obtained somewhere in the middle of my time in the demo. So the bosses are a lot of fun. There's a lot of variety. One of the highlights of the game for me. I really enjoy the combat with these guys. And I think part of me wishes there was a little bit less of the focus on the smaller enemies, a bit more focus on the big guys, because I think that's the most fun part of the game, in my opinion. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time with the boss enemies overall. Now, in addition to the single-player Party of 4 type content in the different worlds, there's a lot of community events that can be found in the game. For example, there was a concert that took place on the first night of the closed beta. Not really my thing, but I can see how people would enjoy these kind of events, and it does make me wonder what kind of events they'll have in the future. Maybe some, who knows, some sport-like events. There was actually a little mini game in the plaza where you could kick a kickball sort of thing, play around with that. I don't know what else they'll do with these kind of community events in the game, but I hope there's a lot of variety. There was also a trailer, actually. You could go to the TV screens in the shopping plaza, as well as I think the cafe or whatever, and watch the Sonic movie trailer. It would actually play out there, and it was pretty cool to see that. I wonder if they'll actually add other content to these TV screens that you can watch, maybe. Who knows? But that was pretty interesting as well. As far as additional community content is concerned, there were, of course, the timed events, and you could also form, I forgot what the game called them, but something like guilds. I joined a guild, and I think the maximum was about 30 people, and I had an area. It was kind of like an Asian kind of area in theme. It was pretty interesting. I didn't spend a lot of time. I joined it right at the end of the closed beta, actually. I didn't spend a lot of time. I can't give you too many impressions on it. But it added even more to this hub area that you can explore. So there's a lot to do outside of the main combat of the game, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A lot of events, and I'm kind of interested to see what they will add to the game in the future. Now, as far as the big MMO-like events in the game, there are raid-like events. These are the timed events that I mentioned earlier. And these were, honestly, I think for me, the down point of the game for me. And the reason why I say that is because these big, large raids of about 12 to 24 people in size, roughly, if I can remember right. The gameplay kind of falls apart a bit. And the reason why I say that is there's so many effects going off, there's so many enemies, there's so much going on, it's hard to pay attention to who you're fighting, what's going on, who's doing what. It's pure chaos, and I can understand if people would like this just on the party aspects of the game, maybe on just the team-based aspects, but it really doesn't feel like you're working as a team. It feels like a bunch of random people fighting a whole army of enemies. And the mechanics of the game really just don't matter at all at that point. Again, to compare to Monster Hunter, the thing I would find most similar to this game, in Monster Hunter you focus mostly just on the big, large enemies, and the game is very combat mechanic heavy, very mechanic heavy in general, with RPG-like mechanics. But Phantasy Star Online 2 doesn't have as much of an emphasis on that, and these raids are definitely one of the reasons why I feel that way. Because really, no matter how you approach these raids, you're not really going to come out feeling like you played a significant part in the outcome of the raid. It really feels like just a whole bunch of people going in and just kind of goofing around, shooting things, and I could see how people would find that fun, but it wasn't for me. Now, in addition to the raid battles, these raid areas, there's also raid bosses. In the closed beta test, we were able to fight Dark Fowls. Now, Dark Fowls is this big, huge boss with, I think, like 6 arms. And Dark Fowls went down really fast during most of my time fighting him, because I would go in, everybody would be lobbing off their powerful shots, and he would go down in minutes, if not seconds. It was crazy. I think maybe 2 minutes on average, 2 or 3 minutes on average, was about how much time I spent fighting the guy each time. So the events last about half an hour, and in that time you'll get maybe 6 or 7 tries to fight a boss, because he just went down so fast. And I know that was on normal. I never got to play him on hard until the very end. Although even then, I think by that point people were high enough level that we were still beating him very quickly. And I wanted to have fun with the fight, but at the same time, that just like with the raid battles, there's so much going on, you don't feel like you're actually any kind of significant component to the outcome of the battle. So I would just sit around shooting his hands, and then maybe after 3 or 4 shots, he's dead. Bam, I collect my loot, and I leave. And it was similar with the other major boss, raid boss, which was a kind of a large tank. I didn't get any footage for him, but it was a large tank. You just run up to him, you hop on top, and some big robot comes out. You shoot him a few times, and then it's dead. And again, just all in all, these big, large-scale raid things, not for me. It was my least favorite aspect of the game. I don't play a lot of MMOs, so maybe that's how these things usually go. But I feel like this game was designed for about 1 to 4 people. That's how the mechanics are balanced. They're balanced for the player to kind of dance around the enemy, avoid the enemy well, and then counterattack when an opportunity awaits. So I really didn't feel like this game was well designed for that kind of content. But who knows, maybe that'll change in the future. I doubt it. This is an old game, of course. So I doubt anything like that is changing. But the game has so many positives that I feel like this one thing that I didn't like much myself is just a drop in the bottle. The main content of the game, the single player element, 1 to 4 party element, is so fun and frantic and provides so much variety as well as good boss content that I didn't really mind that the raid content was not all that great in my opinion. But the problem I find with the raid content is, and one thing I haven't mentioned yet, is that Phantasy Star Online 2 is a free-to-play game. And because of that, the game is going to want you to spend some money on cosmetics as well as additional things like inventory space and things like that. And because this game is constantly giving you those RNG-heavy weapons, I definitely could feel like that may become a problem in the future. But the issue, how this ties in with the raid bosses, is that I feel like the in-game for this game is going to be heavy on the raid bosses, which in my opinion is the weakest part of the game. So, depending on these raid bosses to get good loot, which you could probably use for the more tightly focused 1 to 4 player parts of the game, not sure how to feel about that. And that could be, in my opinion, a bit of a minor negative to the game when it releases. But who knows? We'll see. I haven't played the full game yet, or at least I haven't played it. I haven't played the game in its entirety yet. I've only had one major day to formulate an opinion on this, so who knows? Maybe it's not that big of a deal. But as far as my final thoughts and conclusions on this game, I really enjoyed my time with it. Again, I love the arcadey gameplay. I love the planets with all their various mission objectives and fighting the single-player enemies, as well as the bosses were a lot of fun to fight. And there was so much content to do in the hub world, etc., the more community-focused MMO aspects of the game, that I think the game provides a lot of content, especially for a free-to-play game. And understanding that the game has a lot going on. I'm a big fan of the Monster Hunter franchise, and this game really feels like it could scratch that itch for you if maybe you spent a lot of time playing Monster Hunter World or something similar. And it feels just different enough with its more MMO-focused gameplay and content that it can provide something new and fresh for other people as well. And especially because it is, again, more arcadey and less mechanics driven, I'd say. I feel like this game is pretty good for newcomers to this sort of genre of video games. This kind of hunter genre of video games. I feel like it really is good for people who are unfamiliar with this to kind of get into it. You just have fun blasting enemies with friends. So again, final thoughts on this game is that I really liked it. I'm interested to see where it goes, and I may like to check out the online beta when it comes out. So, all that being said, please let us know what you guys feel as well, and if you like this content, let me know. And I'll see you on the next one. This is Dr. Brazen from the One Stop Shop, signing out. Have a good one.